Imagine your immune system, like essentially creating custom-designed weapons to dissolve the scaffolding of your own skin.
Right. It's
There's
true.
no invading bacteria, no virus. It's just your body treating your own tissue like a hostile invader. It is a terrifying biological betrayal.
It really is. I mean, it fundamentally rewrites how you experience your own body. When your internal defense system misidentifies your skin as a threat, the destruction is just relentless.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are exploring a highly specific, really emerging medical question that sits right at this chaotic intersection of dermatology, immunology, and microbiology.
Yeah, the intersection where things get really complicated.
Exactly. We are looking at a chronic, often incredibly painful condition called lichen sclerosus, or LS, and we're asking, can probiotics, the bacteria we usually associate with yogurt and gut health, actually help manage this autoimmune battlefield?
It's a question that's surfacing constantly right now as people look for holistic answers. Because living with a chronic condition, it just drives you to look beyond traditional medicine, searching for anything that might offer relief.
Right. And to get to the bottom of this for you, we aren't just looking at one opinion. We are pulling from a massive stack of current research today.
A very dense stack.
Oh, totally.
No.
We're synthesizing clinical guidelines from major medical bodies like the European Academy of Dermatology and Venereology, parsing through specialized women's health clinic protocols, and diving into some incredibly cutting-edge metagenomic research.
Including that brand new data from the vulvar microbiome Leiden cohort.
Yes.
That data is phenomenal because it maps a microscopic ecosystem we barely even understood a decade ago. While there is currently no known cure for LS, mapping the local environment of the skin is, well, it's completely revolutionizing how we view long-term management.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can talk about whether bacteria can act as a treatment, we really have to understand the damage this condition actually causes. Like, what exactly happens when someone develops lichen sclerosus?
So lichen sclerosus is a chronic inflammatory dermatosis. It predominantly affects the genital and anal areas.
And demographically, it's mostly women, right?
Primarily, yeah. It mainly appears in prepubescent girls and postmenopausal women, though it can also affect uncircumcised men.
Oh, wait, really? I didn't realize men could get it too.
Yeah, they can. In men, it often causes a severe tightening of the foreskin, a condition known as phimosis, which can actually require surgical intervention.
Wow. And the symptoms for women are just agonizing. I mean, the sources describe an intense, life-altering itch that interrupts sleep, severe pain, and the skin physically tearing.
It's excruciating.
You also get the formation of these white atrophic plaques. For anyone not familiar with that term, what does an atrophic plaque actually look and feel like?
It looks like fragile, crinkled tissue paper. The skin essentially thins out, loses all its elasticity, and turns this pale white color.
So it just breaks easily.
Exactly. Because it is so thin, it tears with the slightest friction. But paradoxically, the relentless inflammation also causes heavy scarring.
Right.
And over time, if that inflammation isn't managed, it leads to something called architectural effacement.
Which is a very clinical way of saying the anatomy literally fuses together.
That is the brutal reality of it, unfortunately. The labia minora can fuse to the labia majora, completely altering the natural anatomy.
That's horrifying.
It can bury the clitoris, close over the vaginal opening, and just make basic functions like urination or intercourse excruciating or even impossible. And crucially, and this is so important, chronic unmanaged LS significantly increases the risk of developing vulvar squamous cell carcinoma, which is a type of skin cancer.
The destruction is just immense.
Yeah.
And the sources point to a very specific mechanism driving it. We mentioned the body attacking its own scaffolding earlier.
Yes, the autoantibodies.
Right. The research shows that 60 to 80% of women with vulvar LS have autoantibodies attacking a specific protein called extracellular matrix protein 1, or ECM1.
Yeah, so the extracellular matrix is essentially the biological mortar holding the bricks of your skin cells together. It provides all the structural integrity.
Okay, so it's the glue.
Basically, when your autoantibodies attack the ECM1 protein, they are actively destroying the mortar. The wall crumbles, the skin loses its structure, thins out, and becomes incredibly fragile.
Because it is this aggressive, overactive immune response, the clinical gold standard for treatment isn't like a soothing lotion. It is ultra-potent topical corticosteroids, like the clobetasol propionate.
The heavy hitters.
Yeah, exactly. You apply this intense steroid to forcefully suppress those immune cells, forcing them to stand down. That halts the inflammation, stops the scarring, and drops the cancer risk.
It is the absolute cornerstone of treatment. You just have to shut down the autoimmune attack to save the tissue.
But I have to push back on this whole microbiome angle. If LS is fundamentally a deep systemic autoimmune disease where the body's internal defense system is attacking its own biological mortar, why are we even looking at surface bacteria?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, sounds like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. If the fire is inside the house, why are we studying the grass outside?
It's a brilliant question, and it's exactly why the old paradigm is shifting right now. We know physical things can trigger autoimmune flares, trauma, friction from tight clothing, or, prolonged exposure to urine.
Right, the sources call that the Kobner response.
Exactly. The Kobner response is where a physical injury triggers a disease flare. But researchers realized the grass outside the surface environment isn't just a passive bystander in all this.
Oh, interesting.
The microbiome actively communicates with your immune system. If the microbial soil is toxic or imbalanced, it can send distress signals that keep that internal autoimmune alarm constantly triggered.
Which forces us to zoom way, way in on the biological real estate where this is happening, the vulvar microbiome. The anatomy here is wild because it's a transition zone, right?
It is a highly unique microclimate. The vulva acts as a bridge. On the outside, you have the stratified epithelium of the skin. Think of that like tough, layered bricks designed to withstand the outside world.
Okay, makes sense.
But on the inside, you have the mucosal epithelium of the vagina, which is a delicate, moisture-secreting layer. The vulva is where these two entirely different biological terrains just blend together.
And mapping the bacteria that live on this bridge used to be almost impossible. The older research relied on 16S sequencing. But the new data we are looking at from the Leiden cohort uses shotgun metagenomic sequencing.
The technological leap there cannot be overstated, honestly. Older 16S sequencing was, it was like taking a basic census.
Right, just a head count.
Yeah, it told you broadly who lived in the neighborhood, but nothing else. Shotgun metagenomics reads the entire genetic profile of the area. We see exactly which species are there, but more importantly, we see what they are capable of doing.
Like their actual function.
Exactly. We can map out the chemicals they produce, the enzymes they secrete, and how they interact with human cells.
And when they used this shotgun method on healthy individuals, they found 3 distinct normal microbial signatures for this transition zone.
Correct.
It can be skin dominant, featuring bacteria like Cutibacterium acnes, which we usually associate with facial skin. It can be vagina dominant, or it can be a balanced, multi-species mixture of both.
Exactly. The transition zone borrows heavily from its neighbors depending on the individual's unique biology and, hormone levels.
Now, when we talk about gut health, the golden rule is always diversity. You want a massive, diverse rainforest of bacteria in your stomach. Is this delicate transition zone the same way?
It is the exact opposite, and this trips a lot of people up. Yeah. For the vagina and the adjacent vulvar tissues, you do not want a diverse rainforest. You want a highly exclusive, heavily guarded fortress. A healthy environment here is often dominated by just a few species, primarily from the Lactobacillus family.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the Lactobacillus isn't just hanging out, it acts like a microscopic terraformer. It actively changes the atmosphere so other things can't survive.
It is a masterful survival strategy. Lactobacillus species produce lactic acid. They pump this acid out into the environment, keeping the local pH incredibly low, usually between 3.8 and 4.5.
So they are basically waging chemical warfare. They make the environment so acidic that pathogenic, pro-inflammatory bacteria literally cannot breathe or establish a foothold.
Yes, and at the same time, they physically coat the skin cells.
Taking up space.
Right, that physical coating is called competitive exclusion. They take up all the biological parking spaces. Between the acid barrier and taking up all the physical space, harmful invaders simply have nowhere to land and no way to survive.
So if Lactobacillus is the terraformer protecting the neighborhood, what happens to this ecosystem when someone develops lichen sclerosus?
Total environmental collapse. Studies looking at the microbiome of LS patients show severe dysbiosis. The protective taxa, the lactobacillus, they just plummet.
Wow.
And other helpful bacteria like Funigoldia and Staphylococcus completely drop off the map too.
And nature abhors a vacuum. When the protectors die off, the data shows a massive influx of pro-inflammatory anaerobic microbes. We see spikes in bad actors with names like Escherichia, Porphyromonas, and Proteobacteria.
And because we have that shotgun metagenomic data, we know it's not just a change in population, it's a change in function. The metabolic activity of the entire ecosystem shifts.
How so?
Well, specifically, researchers observed a significant downregulation in enzymes linked to the L-histidine pathway in LS patients.
Wait, the L-histidine pathway. For those of us who aren't biochemists, what does that actually mean for the skin on a practical level?
What's fascinating here is how directly bacteria influence our skin structure. Histidine is an essential amino acid. In the skin, it is a crucial building block for filaggrin.
Filaggrin.
Yeah, it's a protein that binds keratin fibers together and maintains the skin's moisture barrier. It also helps modulate local inflammation. When the microbiome shifts and the L-histidine pathway shuts down, you lose a massive chunk of your skin's natural ability to repair its barrier and calm itself down.
The structural integrity collapses even further. But this brings up the ultimate chicken or egg scenario.
Right.
Did the lactobacillus die off because the autoimmune inflammation and the thinning, tearing tissue of LS made the environment a hellscape?
Right.
Like, did the autoimmune fire drive the good bacteria out, or did the bad bacteria move in first, shut down the L-histidine pathway, and trigger the autoimmune fire alarm?
So the clinical consensus is moving toward a bidirectional loop. It is a vicious self-feeding cycle. Let's look at menopause as an example. Estrogen levels naturally drop. Estrogen is what feeds the glycogen to the lactobacillus. Without food, the lactobacillus population shrinks.
The acid shield drops.
The shield drops. Pathogens move in. This initial dysbiosis weakens the epithelial barrier. Once that physical barrier is compromised, the underlying immune system gets exposed and overreacts, launching the ECM1 autoantibodies.
Oh, I see.
And the resulting inflammation tears the skin, creating an even more hostile environment where good bacteria can't survive, allowing more pathogens to breed, which just drives more inflammation.
It just spirals out of control. Which brings us to the core question driving this entire deep dive. If this is a biological loop and the bacterial balance is completely out of whack in LS patients, can we just hack the system?
You mean with probiotics?
Yeah. Can we simply apply probiotics, reintroduce the lactobacillus terraformers, and fix the problem?
This is where we have to look very soberly at the clinical guidelines from BSH and the European experts. They deliver a very hard truth. Currently, there is zero strong clinical evidence proving that probiotics can reverse, cure, or directly improve the structural tissue changes of lichen sclerosus.
So they cannot stop the autoimmune fire. They cannot rebuild the ECM1 mortar.
They absolutely cannot, and they must never replace topical steroids. If you stop your clopidogrel to rely solely on a probiotic suppository, you are allowing that autoimmune fire to burn unchecked.
And that's dangerous.
Extremely. That is how you end up with permanent anatomical fusion and a high risk of cancer.
Okay, but if they don't treat the LS itself, why do so many specialized gynecologists and dermatologists still recommend probiotics as part of an LS protocol? There has to be a tangible benefit.
Oh, the benefit is immense, but it is an adjunct benefit. Think about the daily reality of a patient managing LS. Their skin is incredibly fragile, often covered in microscopic fissures and tears from the condition itself.
And on top of the broken skin, they are applying ultra-potent topical steroids every single week.
Precisely. Those steroids are miraculously effective at stopping the autoimmune attack, but they do it by actively suppressing the local immune system. So you have a patient with broken, compromised skin and a deliberately suppressed immune response in that specific area.
It's basically leaving the front door wide open for opportunistic infections.
Exactly. LS patients are highly susceptible to secondary infections. They frequently suffer from recurrent vulvovaginal candidiasis, which is yeast infections, or thrush and bacterial vaginosis, known as BV.
Which are awful on their own.
Awful. These infections cause intense itching and burning, which is agonizing because it mimics an LS flare, causing massive anxiety for the patient.
Ah, so the probiotics aren't fighting the lichen sclerosus directly. They're acting as mercenaries to fight off the secondary infections that prey on the vulnerability caused by the LS and the steroid treatments.
That is the crucial distinction. Probiotics are a powerful preventative shield. By replenishing the lactobacillus, you restore that competitive exclusion.
Putting the bouncers back at the door.
Yes. You put the terraformers back in charge to keep the yeast and the BV pathogens from taking hold. This allows the steroids to do their crucial job of calming the autoimmune disease without the patient suffering from constant, agonizing secondary infections.
And you can't just eat a bowl of generic supermarket yogurt and expect it to work, right? The clinical sources highlight very specific strains for this targeted warfare.
Very specific, yeah.
The evidence points heavily to Lactobacillus rhamnosus GR1, Lactobacillus reuteri RC14, and Lactobacillus crispatus. Those specific strains have the clinical backing for actually reducing BV and yeast recurrence.
Strain specificity is everything in microbiology. The bacteria that thrive in your highly acidic stomach are fundamentally different from the ones that thrive in the vulvovaginal transition zone. You need the right tool for the specific job.
Which raises a logistical question. If we want these specific strains to colonize the vulva and vagina, how do we get them there? Since stomach acid destroys so much of what we swallow, wouldn't a vaginal suppository be vastly superior to taking an oral pill?
The delivery mechanism is a huge topic of clinical debate right now. Research shows that specific oral probiotics, particularly the GR1 and RC14 strains, can actually survive the journey through the gastrointestinal tract and eventually migrate across the perineum to colonize the vaginal area.
But that sounds like a long, slow journey.
It is, which is why vaginal suppositories offer a massive immediate advantage. They deliver a concentrated dose of lactobacillus directly onto the battlefield.
Bypassing the stomach entirely.
Right. This immediately lowers the local pH, creating that acidic shield, and physically disrupts the biofilms of pathogenic bacteria much faster than waiting for an oral supplement to migrate.
So probiotics are an incredible supporting player in managing the side effects. But they are not the cure. They are part of a broader, holistic toolbox. What else is in that evidence-based toolbox? What are clinics recommending to support the steroid therapy?
The evidence-based supportive care focuses heavily on barrier protection and reducing physical triggers.
The simple things that make a huge difference. Switching from harsh, fragrant soaps to completely bland emollients, things like plain medical-grade petroleum jelly or aqueous creams.
Simple is usually better here.
Yeah, and wearing loose cotton underwear to eliminate friction, which we know triggers that Kovner response.
Systemically, many specialists recommend an anti-inflammatory diet too, emphasizing omega-3 fatty acids from fish, incorporating turmeric, and significantly reducing refined sugars.
So just generally calming the body down.
Exactly. While a diet won't cure a genetic autoimmune disease, modulating the overall systemic inflammation in your body can raise the threshold for what triggers a flare-up.
Okay, but we have to talk about the hype. Because anyone Googling LS is going to be bombarded with targeted ads for trendy, wildly expensive treatments. The forces specifically mention interventions like fractional CO2 laser therapy, platelet-rich plasma injections, PRP, and lipofilling, which is fat grafting.
Yes, you see these everywhere.
People are spending thousands of dollars out of pocket for these. What does the actual science say?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to ground ourselves in what LS actually is at a cellular level. It is an antibody-driven destruction of the extracellular matrix. When we look at systematic reviews of these expensive procedures, the clinical consensus is stark. They are strictly experimental.
Mean the proof just isn't there.
Exactly. Take laser therapy. While some patients report temporary anecdotal relief from symptoms, rigorous studies have not been able to prove that lasers actually halt the underlying autoimmune inflammation or prevent disease progression.
And the PRP.
The same applies to PRP. It's used heavily in regenerative medicine to stimulate healing, but the trials for its use in LS suffer from small sample sizes, lack of control groups, and wildly mixed results.
And the real danger here isn't just someone wasting their savings on a laser treatment. The catastrophic danger is a patient deciding to use an experimental laser instead of their topical steroids.
That is the nightmare scenario for every dermatologist. If you abandon the gold standard steroids for an unproven experimental treatment that doesn't shut down the ECM1 autoantibodies, you are allowing the disease to run rampant in the background.
Silent damage.
Right. The inflammation silently continues, leading directly to permanent architectural fusion and heavily elevating the risk of vulvar cancer. You cannot negotiate with this level of inflammation.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this vast amount of information into focus. Lichen sclerosus is a deeply complex chronic autoimmune condition. It's an internal alarm system relentlessly destroying the skin's biological order. Probiotics are absolutely not a magic cure for LS. They will not rebuild the tissue, and they will never replace your steroid ointment.
But they remain incredibly valuable allies. By strategically deploying specific lactobacillus strains, particularly through direct application, you introduce microscopic bodyguards.
I love that visual.
It's accurate. They terraform the environment, restore the acidic shield, and protect your incredibly vulnerable, immunosuppressed skin from the misery of secondary infections.
It really highlights a profound, necessary shift in modern medicine for you to think about.
Yeah.
We can no longer view a skin condition, our gut health, our vaginal microbiome, and our immune system in isolated silos.
They're completely intertwined.
Exactly. They're constantly communicating, fighting over, and sharing the exact same microscopic real estate.
And understanding the rules of that shared real estate opens up incredible futuristic possibilities. Which brings up a fascinating thought to leave you with based on this new metagenomic research. We noted earlier that prolonged exposure to urine and the resulting moisture occlusion is highly suspected to play a central role in triggering the pathogenesis of LS.
Right, urine acting as the chronic chemical and physical trigger for that Koebner response.
Precisely. Now, if urine exposure is a primary chemical trigger, and we now know definitively from shotgun sequencing that the microbiome is heavily altered and devoid of protective bacteria in LS patients, what if the future of LS treatment isn't a steroid cream at all?
Oh, wow. What if the ultimate therapy is a genetically engineered, super-strain topical probiotic? Something you apply that permanently colonizes the skin to act as a living biological shield against urine, while continuously pumping out L-histidine and immune-modulating compounds to stop the autoimmune autoantibodies from ever deploying in the first place.
It would fundamentally flip the paradigm from desperately suppressing a disease to engineering a permanent, localized ecosystem of peace.
Suddenly, we aren't just desperately putting out fires. We're actively tending a complex living garden that protects itself. Something fascinating to mull over.
Yeah.
Until next time.